Networks don't talk about it. Government can't tax it. But sports betting is a $200 billion a year business.
That's a major U.S. Supreme Court ruling that could open the door for legalized sports betting all across the country.
The Supreme Court is giving the green light for states to determine on their own whether they want to legalize sports gambling.
Tell Donahue his next pick is good for 20 grand, but I need him to guarantee a win, okay? I need a lock.
He's not that fucking good.
No, Tommy, he has to. All right, he has to, or else they're going to kill me. Do you realize this, Tommy? They're going to fucking kill me. I can't afford to gamble anymore. I need a fucking lock.
That time again, it is Thursday when you're hearing this, and it is opening night for the NFL. Yes, everyone that is listening to this right now, you've made it. Congratulations, whether you're listening to this on your way to work, whether you're listening to this pregame, whether you missed it and you're picking this up after the fact, doesn't matter. Football is back. The NFL is back. This week, you don't see anybody with me. I'm running solo dolo on the mic this week. No BS. All ball, no BS. I've got some college football that we're going to talk about. I've got plenty of NFL. I'm going to touch on every single game, and I've got my futures. Before we get into that, looking at today's schedule, we'll have a few house cleaning things like I said. We have to recap college football week 1. It was a crazy one. We're going to look at college football week 2. Like I said, I've got NFL futures to touch on, and then our NFL week 1 preview where we'll look at every single game on the docket. Going to be a busy one. First, some house cleaning things. Thank you very much to everybody who listened to the Gino episode last week. Thank you to Gino himself. Always a fantastic guest. We'll be having him on later in the season. Guys like Ben Carey is going to join us. For those of you that remember the long lost recording of Ben Carey that was never heard, hopefully we'll get another run back with him shortly. Sim from Cut, we're going to get him back on the program as well. And Dan Koob from Sport Trade. Sport Trade getting a lot of traction right now. Congratulations to those guys. They are live in Colorado. Big things for them. Let's talk college football. College football week 1 recap, 8-3 on the weekend. 8-3 on the weekend. For those of you that followed, you saw I added a few props to the card after what we talked about last week. Looking at the futures, Duke and Colorado. I mean, huge upsets. Absolutely huge upsets. I couldn't honestly be any happier. It would be probably, I don't know, you would right now, Colorado probably 5, 7.5. Anywhere between there is probably what you get nowadays. And looking at bad beats, nothing to really write home about. I was completely wrong about Wisconsin. They came out flat. SC and LSU got blown out. So we're moving on. Super fun weekend. First time in a long time betting with some volume, but we have a lot more on deck. I am very excited for another college football weekend. Let's jump in to some of the matchups. First one is going to be the most heavily bet college football game, maybe of all time, at least regular season. Greatest betting game of all time. It's going to be Nebraska. Nebraska currently 3-point dogs against Colorado. An interesting one. Obviously, the Buffs, the hottest ticket in the world right now. Nebraska, painful to watch, honestly, against Minnesota. Sims, cute little dual threat quarterback, but at 6 yards per attempt, he doesn't scare me. Colorado's defense, opportunistic to say the least against TCU. The pace of their offense is not helping their defense. They're going to need to figure out a pace that works out for both of them so they can kind of work out together, because that is going to catch up. Right now, it's not going to hurt you as much if you're Colorado, but it's definitely going to hurt you in the long run. And then looking at Nebraska, I do think they slow them down. Nebraska held Minnesota to 3.6 yards per carry last week. Colorado nearly doubled that. Or sorry, not yards per carry, yards per play. Colorado nearly doubled that. I do think Colorado gets slowed down a little bit, but I'm going to take the Buffs. I'm going to be part of the major public influx of money coming in on Colorado. I think they do win. It's obviously at home. I feel fantastic. I feel fantastic about Colorado. It's good to feel right. And there were some people that looked pretty stupid being wrong on it. So looking at our next game that I want to highlight, it is Notre Dame and NC State. Notre Dame laying 7.5 at NC State. Sam Hartman, he was human against Tennessee State, but let's not act like that wasn't by design. The Irish, they don't play many tune-up games during the season, but when they do, they are not showing shit. It's all about getting their guys reps. They draw the Wolfpack. wildly underwhelming 24-14 win against UConn. Brennan Armstrong, UVA transfer. I've been vocal. Not very high on him. Wasn't high on him last year. He ran for 2 scores and 96 yards, but he did it on 19 carries. Not a very sustainable way to go. What surprised me is UConn's ability to move the ball against a usually stout NC State front. NC State, they allowed over 5 yards per carry, and UConn rushed for over 160 yards against the ACC's second best unit from a year ago. Notre Dame has Hartman, but what they do have as well is 2, possibly 3 running backs they're going to be playing on Sundays. If they can find a balance, I think they blow the doors off them. I laid 7. It's up to 7.5 now. I would lay this thing all the way up to to double digits. I really do like Notre Dame this weekend. Looking at one that should be interesting, there needs to actually be an over-under on this one. Iowa State. The over-under, actually, the total is 36.5. Looking at Iowa laying 4, there really should be a total on how many players have a bet on this game, because nobody bets college football like Iowa players do. Nobody bets college sports like Iowa players do, apparently. The Hawkeyes looked like shit in week 1. They got outgained by Utah State through the air and on the ground. Usually a competent Iowa run game, held to 2.44 yards per carry. State, on the other hand, outgained by Northern Iowa, but thanks to some timely turnovers, they did outlast the Cats 30-9. 36.5 is a ridiculous total by all accounts, but when it was 10-7 a year ago, that's what you get. It's a game that I'm probably going to pass on. Be super glad that I didn't watch. One thing that I am betting this weekend, I did very well last weekend with a little 2-teamer. I've got a 2-teamer again. This one's going to be -114. And I got $1.25 on it. Leg 1, Ole Miss and Tulane. Ole Miss laying 7.5, 62.5 point total. It's the first of our 2 ranked matchups on Saturday. Ole Miss in week 1, they were Ole Miss. They stomped out Mercer. Dart looks like he's going to fit right into the top quarterbacks of the SEC. Judkins led the conference in rushing last year. And, oh yeah, if you missed it, Trey Harris caught 4 touchdown passes. So things went really well. Tulane had a wild game against Southern Alabama last week. 4-year starter, Michael Pratt, he was playing road to glory mode, goes 14 for 16, 294 and 4 touchdowns, added 40 on the ground. The Green Wave defense, they forced 5 turnovers. And if it really wasn't if that was like the whole story, that'd be great. Unfortunately, it wasn't. It was a touchdown game midway through the 3rd quarter. Tulane, they turned the ball over 3 times themselves. Their leading rusher had 41 yards. I'm not going to lay the points, but I'm going to take Ole Miss to be the first leg. I'll take Ole Miss money line, and my second leg is going to be Oregon. Oregon's going to face a Texas Tech team here. They're laying 6.5. Riddle me this line. Texas Tech last weekend lost to Wyoming. Oregon hung 81 points on Portland State, and I'm not going to read into that, but they're a perfect second parlay piece. I think the Ducks have put it all together. They have a really solid run game now with Bo Nix. I do think that this is an Oregon team that is better than last year. They're definitely not the same team that last year was. So I do think Oregon is going to prevail. So Oregon, Ole Miss, a little combo there for that one. And that's going to bring us to our game of the day, a game of the day that I really don't have a lean on. It's Texas catching 7.5 at Bama, 55.5 point total. Quinn Ewers, hopefully more healthy than last year. It's really hard to say. There's undoubtedly more help behind him if needed at quarterback. Week 1, Texas handled Rice, but they didn't really throttle him. 35.5 point spread would have led you to believe that. No Bijan Robinson. It stood out to me like a sore thumb. Nobody got it going on the ground. They barely notched 4 yards per carry. What did impress me, though, is the Longhorn defense. Only allowing 176 yards, 1.08 yards per carry on the ground. They feel like they match up really well with the Crimson Tide front. Speaking of the Tide, it's business as usual. They've got 5 stars everywhere on defense, and Jalen Milroe, it looks to be the perfect next in line at quarterback. He had 5 touchdowns last week against Middle Tennessee. Like I said, though, I don't really have a lean here. I'm going to keep an eye on some props. I do think there are going to be some props that have some good availability, especially with the way that Texas is throwing the ball, looking at some of the Texas receivers. But obviously, we can't look at that till later in the week. So in that matchup, I'm going to look props. Last college football matchup I'm going to touch on, it is unfortunately the Wisconsin Badgers. They are laying 6.5 at Washington State, total 54.5. Badgers underwhelmed. It is what it is. Badgers underwhelmed. Luke Fickell's debut, Not going to be a simple task. Cam Ward lit up Colorado State, had more than 450 yards through the air. He also led them on the ground. The Badgers do have quite the two-headed monster. Chaz Malusi, Braylon Allen, the two combined 10 yards per carry on 30 attempts and found the end zone twice. I was expecting a lower total, hoping to get, an over in like the mid 40s, but it's a new era now. It really is. And looking at a Badger total, they're going to put it up in the 50s, even with the fact that we saw lower totals in general this weekend. Badgers kind of still sit in that mid 50s range. I'm going to take another look at Braylon Allen's rushing yards. We got it under a Benji last week. I don't think that happens again. But if it does, that'd be awesome. We would absolutely love that. Now, that is going to be it for college football this week. Let's talk NFL futures. I do have a few NFL futures that I locked in. The first one I locked in a few weeks ago. If you've been listening to this program, you already know I have the Jaguars. I got the Jags over 10.5 wins, plus 155. I think the Jags could possibly win the most games in the AFC. They have an absolute cake schedule. Their division is terrible. I think they win 6 division games. And if you win 6 division games, you're over halfway there. To me, the Jaguars are a team. It's an alternate team total. You can take 9.5. 9.5 is pretty juiced. I wouldn't recommend it, especially for a long season total like that. But at 10.5 at plus 155, I laid 2 units on it. I feel really good about the Jags. Next one for me is going to be Chris Olave. Chris Olave, 5.5 touchdowns. That is his number this year. Derek Carr in his career, he has never had a receiver not clear this number. All 9 seasons, he's had a guy clear the number. Last year, Olave caught passes from Andy Dalton, Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill, and still got 4 touchdowns. Now you get Michael Thomas, Juwan Johnson. Those guys in the fold should receive some shade from defenders in the red zone. I think it's going to open up Olave's opportunities. Remember, this is a guy at Ohio State that caught 32 touchdowns in his final 33 games of his collegiate career. He likes finding the end zone. Last year was not great for him. There were a lot of guys that couldn't find the end zone last year, and he was one of them, unfortunately. He's now got a quarterback that's going to stretch things out. I think he gets over that 5.5 total. I got, again, 2 units on it. And then next one, Swole Batman, A.J. Brown, over 1,050.5 receiving yards. I've got 2 units. It's really hard to say you don't enjoy watching Antonio Brown play football on a weekly basis. Having a future now, I can do it for a reason. I don't think I have him in fantasy. As long as he stays healthy, it's a number he's cleared in 3 or 4 seasons. After paying Jalen Hurts, I've kind of got this theory that Philly's not going to be doing quarterback-designed runs over and over with their multi-million-dollar man. And Brown had nearly 1,500 yards last season. To me, it's injury or cash it. I don't see a world where Brown flops while playing less than 15 games. To me, it's 15 games, 16 probably make me feel a little bit better. But he's incredible. He's one of the best receivers in the NFL, and he's got a quarterback that just continues to progress and get better every year. Love his number. Another 2 units on it. And we stick to the receiving props. I don't know why I was so receiver heavy, but it's David Njoku. David Njoku, for those that know me, you know that I love him. I bet him a lot last year. This year, over 550.5 receiving yards. I'd reckon I'm probably one of the few out there that actually has this ticket, but he finished with 628 yards a season ago, and he played with Jacoby Brissett and a mostly broken Deshaun Watson. His yards per game with Brissett was 51.5. That dropped down just below 33 with Watson. However, if he averaged the 32.8 that he averaged with Watson, he clears it in 17 games. Obviously, I expect better for him. I probably don't expect him to play all 17 games. That'd be great. But regardless, a really low number at 550.5 in an offense that really has a lot of passing to go around if they want to. So I like David Njoku. That's going to be a 1.5 play for me on that one. And the last but not least, a little bit of a stretch play here. Anthony Richardson, over 2,600 passing yards. I only got a unit. My main thing is I watched an absolute noodle-armed Matt Ryan throw for over 250 yards per game in this offense last year. And this offense arguably featured the best running back for nearly 3/4 of the season. Richardson admittedly doesn't have the best weapons in the world, but it's a team that should have some solid athletes. They get Isaiah McKenzie from Buffalo. You bring back Alec Pierce. You've got who's likely a number 2 somewhere else, but he's currently your number 1 in Michael Pittman Jr. If Richardson plays the whole year, this is only 150 passing yards a game. They took him far too high to bench him, in my opinion. So if he has a few signs of struggle, I think they keep right with him and they keep moving it on. It's a guy that I really do like. To me, Anthony Richardson is a player that there is a lot of upside, but I don't think that's saying too much. I think that's kind of the whole thought with him. So that is going to be my props. Again, running it back, Anthony Richardson, 26.5 passing yard or 2,600 passing yards. David Njoku, over 550.5 receiving yards. A.J. Brown, 1050 receiving yards. Chris Olave, 5.5 receiving touchdowns. And the Jags, over 10.5 wins. That's it. That's my futures. Quick little 15-minute run through there with futures in college football. That's going to bring us to our main course. We are going to talk NFL here for the next X amount of minutes. We're going to go through every single game. I don't have a lean on every single game. I'm probably going to talk some of these out, but I do have some plays that I've already bet. I'll let you definitely know who that is. And the easiest way to continually track my bets is Action App, or follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter, @_O'Kane__. So looking at NFL Week 1, Game 1. It is Lions and Chiefs. Chiefs laying about a touchdown. I think it's just gotten under a touchdown. Total is 54, and it's the highest total of the weekend by over a field goal. Weather's perfect. Neither of these defenses are projected to finish in the top half of the league, so not super surprising. The Lions, 12-5 against the spread in 2022, covered 9 of their last 10. We did hear, though, Travis Kelce hyperextended his knee at practice earlier this week. It is uncertain that he'll play. However, health expert Chad Ochocinco chimed in with a tweet reading, I quote, "He'll be okay once he gets past the gummy wobbly stage where his knee feels unstable. Takes 24 hours, honestly. We will see him Thursday." I take his word for it. I think he's going to play. I do actually think he's going to play. From everything I've read, it'll be interesting. To me, there are, obviously, you could take the Super Bowl champions coming back and playing at home. You could play the hype train of the Detroit Lions. You could do a few different things on this. But to me, I like props. To me, props are going to be the way to go in this game, and I've got 2 of them. I've got David Montgomery, anytime touchdown. For those of you that remember last year, Barry Sanders' touchdown record, broken by Jamal Williams. Respectfully, Jamal Williams was a 3rd-string running back for the Green Bay Packers a year before that. It doesn't add up. It doesn't add up because it doesn't make sense. It's just the way that the Lions do it. When they get inside the red zone, they pound the rock, because I don't think they really trust Jared Goff at the end of the day. Second one, Jared Goff. I've got over 22.5 completions. He did it in 6 of his last 7 games last year. Very good completion guy. I think having Gibbs out of the backfield, I think Gibbs is a guy that is going to catch 3 to 4 balls per game. I think having, obviously, receiving-wise is a little sketchy right now till you get full strength, but Amon-Ra St. Brown could catch 14 to 15 balls tomorrow night, and I don't think anybody would bat an eye. I don't think they would. He's that kind of receiver. He is a volume receiver. And Jared Goff throwing the ball, I like it at 22.5. That is our opening night game. And looking at the total, by the way, too, in that 54, if you're going to take it, you can't bet the under on opening night. I almost did it. I'm very happy I didn't. So it'd be hard to do. Game number 2. Going to start us off on Sunday. Bengals-Browns. Bengals laying 2 against the Browns in Cincinnati. A 47.5 point total. Burrow's health is in question. We're going to keep a close eye on this as we get closer to Sunday. Cincy was 13-6 against the spread last year, split the season series with Cleveland. People are expecting this big jump from Deshaun Watson back to where he was pre-rubdowns. I don't see it. Cincinnati, they feel like a team that they have a lot to prove. Obviously, they are not 100%. Their defense loses guys. You lose Jesse Bates. You lose Eli Apple. Okay, you lose Eli Apple. Is that a negative or positive? Regardless, it's a team that I would love to bet every week. It's a team I'm probably going to bet more often than not. I bet a lot on Joe Burrow over the years. Right now, it's sitting at 2. I'm going to keep an eye on it. As we get closer, there's a good chance that you're going to see me having a Bengals ticket regardless on Sunday because I don't believe in the nasty man. I don't believe in the Browns. Sorry. That's how I feel about it. And that's kind of a good hill to die on, in my opinion. Game number 2, Sunday, another nooner. Bucks catching 6 points at Minnesota, 45.5 point total. The Bucks, one of 4 teams catching 6 or more this weekend. They joined Detroit, Houston, and Arizona as the largest dogs in week 1. They were 1-7 against the spread in their last 8, including 0-6 against the spread on the road. Minnesota wasn't much better. Minnesota was 1-6 against the spread down the stretch. They are, however, 5-2 against the spread in their last 7 opening days. Let me tell you, Packer fans will tell you, we got spanked by them last year. They showed up. They show up ready to go week 1, and they've looked really, really well doing so. To me, I don't have a lean on laying 6 points with Minnesota. I do think Minnesota is definitely a parlay piece for people that want it. I throw caution to the wind, parlaying teams that you think are going to be bad or think are going to be good in the NFL, especially ones that won every single game by like 1 to 2 points. So for me, you can look at some props, nothing that really stood out. You got Justin Jefferson at 89.5 receiving yards, Kirk Cousins, 268.5 passing yards, and Mike Evans, 53.5 receiving yards. Now, Evans at 53.5 receiving yards, to me, seems low, but it's Baker Mayfield. What kind of Baker Mayfield are we going to get? We're going to get Baker Mayfield where we had him in Cleveland. We're going to get Baker Mayfield where we had him in Los Angeles. We're going to have Baker Mayfield that we got in Carolina. I mean, we now have 4 iterations of Baker Mayfield after having just one like 18 months ago. So very interesting situation. I don't specifically have a lean in that game. I guess if you had to think anything, I'd probably go under. But that's just my thoughts there. Next one is going to be the Panthers and the Falcons. Panthers and Falcons. Panthers catching 3.5. The rookie quarterback catches 3.5. It's probably not the sexiest matchup this weekend, hence the second lowest total at 39.5. But it's got intrigue. You get Bryce Young against Desmond Ridder, Volume 1. For better or for worse, Carolina showed progress at the end of last season. They covered 6 of their final 8, won 4 of their final 6. Atlanta, they covered in 10 of their past 15 in this series, but they just went 3-8 in their past 7. They've went 3-8 against the spread down the stretch and have covered once in their past 7 opening days. It also looks like probably no Cordell Patterson. We may not see Chark on the other side. To me, I don't hate the Panthers here, and I don't hate the Panthers on the money line. It's a team that I might be higher on than others. They made some really good moves in the offseason. They brought in some guys that, the Miles Sanders of the world. I know I've talked some shit on Miles Sanders, but in certain positions, when you've got Chuba Hubbard, it makes sense. I'll tell you what, I'm going to tell you, Panthers, money line. Looking at some props that you can take in that one, Bijan Robinson, whatever the hell it is. Anytime touchdown, most expensive, minus $1.25. That's tough. The one that stood out to me, Kyle Pitts, 26.5 receiving yards. That's one that I'm going to keep an eye on as we get closer. I know he got really skunked down the stretch. I want to look to see what his splits were like when he's playing with Desmond Ridder. And the last one, they've got rookie Bryce Young set at 220. Should be very interesting to see how that goes. To me, the NFC South, as much as you'd like to think that it's exciting, it just lacks the excitement. It's hard to get excited. But, hey, maybe Bryce Young's really, really good. It's hard to say. Looking at our next matchup in this one, it is the Colts and the Jags. The Colts and the Jags, interesting matchup here. Only 4.5 points. Riddle me this. Feels like Indy is getting a little bit of respect. And this thing opened at 3.5. So, I mean, Indy's got the respect. Granted, they've opened the lineup a little bit more. Only the Cardinals had a lower win total going into the season. Also, the Jags not only won, but covered in 6 of their last 7 to end the season. The cherry on top to me, the 6-1 against the spread run that the Jags are currently on against this team. I like Richardson. Talked about that already. But we also talked about how I feel about the Jags. Feels like a game that could get really ugly. I'm going to lay the points. 4.5, 5, probably laid up to 6. Looking at props, you can get Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley back from his little suspension action. 54.5 receiving yards. Trevor Lawrence, 254.5 for passing yards. One that I like and another one that I'm going to keep an eye on, Travis Etienne, 56.5 rushing yards, one that was on my card more than once last year. Our next game, San Francisco, Pittsburgh. Now, this is a classic matchup, teams that have been in the Super Bowl a lot, and I just decided to go back. I said, have they ever played? No. They've combined for 15 Super Bowls, but they've never faced each other. Very random fact, but I thought it was interesting. Matchup's a huge question mark to me. Can San Fran capture the magic that covered 9 of 11 down the stretch and won 12 of 13? Pitt, they won and covered 6 of 7 to finish the season, falling just one short of the postseason. So it feels like there's some unfinished business. Looking at the injuries, Kittle is working on a hamstring. I'm going to expect him to play. It's really going to come down to whose second-year quarterback took that step. Is Purdy the real deal? Flash in the pan? It's a game where I see Pittsburgh winning in a wild one or San Francisco blowing the doors off. Really no in-between. I am going to be taking Christian McCaffrey anytime touchdown, sitting around regular juice, minus 110. You can get either of these second-year quarterbacks around 212 as far as their passing yards go. Next game, it is the Cardinals and Commanders. Probably the more interesting matchup. The lack of trust in Arizona is hilarious, but remember, no Kyler for a few weeks. This is a group that failed to cover in 7 straight to close out 2022. They're also 3-10 straight up against the Redskins. The Commanders in the past couple decades, and they've lost 8 straight to them on the road. The Commanders, on the other hand, they have not laid a touchdown since November 23rd of 2017. They covered 1 of 5 to finish the season, but the optimism is flowing. New quarterback, new ownership, new offensive scheme with Eric Bieniemy. You're not going to catch me laying a touchdown with Washington, but I think there are plenty of people that will. Looking at props, Terry McLaurin's only 3.5 receptions, Sam Howell 206 passing yards, and then James Conner. I want to look at his rush yards. It has not been published yet. That is one that I'm going to look at. He's going to be the only guy in that offense that makes it go for the first few weeks. So moving on to some more noon action. Derek Carr era begins in New Orleans. The Titans are catching 3 on the road. Total's 41. And the Derek Carr era begins with a team that nobody can really figure out. Tennessee lost 7 straight to close out their season, covered 1 of them, proceeded to draft another quarterback in the top 3 rounds. So that means they've had quarterbacks that they've drafted in back-to-back seasons. And on Sunday, they're going to trot out the $36 million cap hit that is Ryan Tannehill. To me, the game smells like an under. New Orleans defense, they held teams to nothing last year. We watched in their final 6 games, the Saints came up short of the total. Neither team had great offenses, and they still don't have great offenses. The Saints, once Alvin Kamara is back, then you can probably convince me that this is a very dangerous offense. Right now, neither of them scare me that much. This is not a game that I could see reach 40. These are 2 teams that in the last month of the season did not have a game reach 40. So to me, the Titans and Saints, that reads like an under. I'm going to play the under there for a unit. And then looking at some props that are available, I did like the Derek Carr over 18.5 completions. Yeah, Derek Henry anytime touchdown for minus $120. And then Hopkins, he gets 16.5 receiving yards for his total. Speaking of Hopkins, let's talk about his ex-team who is catching double digits in opening weekend. The largest of dogs, and really it's not all that close. The Ravens, however, failed to cover in 4 of 5, granted no Lamar Jackson, but they are about as healthy as you can ask for right now. But at the same time, laying close to or at or higher than double digits in the NFL, that's really hard. Lamar is 3-6, laying 10 or more points in his career against the spread. I'm going to pass on this one. I do like some of the props. I like Mechie over 2.5 receptions. I think he's going to have a huge bounce back year. OBJ, 27.5 receiving yards. And Lamar's only got 178 passing yards. So, yeah, this is a Ravens team that I think we see more offensively as far as through the air goes. To me, you get some chances there for props. Probably not going to lay any sort of number with those 2. Moving on to the 3 o'clock, or, well, I guess depending where you live in the country, 3 o'clock. The Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers. Let's talk. We're catching 1.5. The Bears are feisty. Bears fans are feisty. And whether for better or for worse, they've done that every year pretty much for the last probably since 2010. I mean, it just feels like whether it's Mitch Trubisky in there, whether it's Justin Fields in there, obviously Fields is better. Congratulations. I'll tip your hat to that. But he brought you to the number 1 draft pick. And if you don't make the playoffs again and you have 2 picks in the top 10 and this quarterback class, Bears fans, I don't got to tell you, the clock is ticking. And if you lose week 1 to Green Bay at home and the Jordan Love era starts off how I really hope it does, I'm not going to pick the game. Probably still going to bet the Packers, but I'm not going to officially pick it because obviously you know where my heart is. Looking at some props, though, 28.5 receiving yards for Romeo Doubs. Justin Fields, 60.5 rushing yards. I think he had like 80 and well over 100 against us last year. And then Jordan Love, 213.5 passing yards. Thought about doing a Jordan Love future. I couldn't quite bring myself to do it, but maybe I'll bet his prop this weekend. Shifting, like I said, we're to the later games now. Moving out of my Packer fandom mindset, let's talk Eagles Patriots. The Eagles laying 4.5 at New England, 45-point total. The NFC champions, very odd line. And I'm going to guess that Philly is going to get a shit pot of public money. Laying under 5 against a team that didn't even make the postseason last year. Before you get nuts, though, let's look at some trends. The Patriots, they've won 4 of 5 against the NFC East and have covered 5 of their last 7 against the NFC overall. Philly, not a team that you want to back in September. They are 4-12 against the spread in the past 16 September matchups. Last year's Eagles came out flatter than flat. Nearly lost to Detroit in week 1. It was 38-35. It was ugly. Sloppy. If you're going to do this, use the Eagles as a parlay piece. I don't think I would lay the points at 4.5 here. Looking at some props, Mac Jones was around 250 yards. They've dropped that now to 231.5. Jalen Hurts, 238.5. Zeke Elliott, the Patriots' brand new running back, 19.5 rushing yards. Might be worth taking a flyer on that one if you're a fan. Moving right along, Rams and Seahawks, a classic NFC West matchup, one of a few classic matchups we get. The Rams have now covered 5 straight in the series and 4 of the last 5 in Seattle. However, Los Angeles, they lost 7 straight on the road to end the season. I don't think this is an auto upset. Seattle, they covered just 1 of 9 down the stretch, including a 1-4 mark at home. I think that if you're backing anyone here, though, you probably take the points. The Rams, they also covered 5 of their last 6 week 1 games. Cooper Kupp, though, is the one that you got to watch. He may or may not play this weekend. So without him, I'm not sure who the Rams turn to offensively, but with him, I think they're definitely right there. 4.5 is probably a good line. Looking at props, Geno Smith, 247.5. Matt Stafford, 240.5 for yardage. The one that I'm going to keep an eye on and possibly shekel a few dollars on is Kenneth Walker, 63.5 rushing yards. I do think he is going to have a nice evening there. Raiders Broncos. Let's go to the AFC West on the other side here. Raiders are 4-point dogs at the Broncos. 44-point total. Now, I did not understand how much of a one-sided affair this is. Before we get to the one-sided affair, Bronco Colorado fans, they get to watch on Saturday. They get Nebraska and Colorado at 11. If that happens, if they win that and they get to go right down Highway 36 down to Mile High for the next day, it's going to be rowdy and they're going to need it. Vegas has covered in 10 of the last 11 matchups versus Denver and has beaten them 6 straight times. The Broncos, they've lost 9 of their past 10 divisional games, but it is a new era in Denver. I am interested to see how this game goes. I'm not going to bet it. I don't have a strong enough opinion. If I did, I would say probably the under. Looking at some props, Russell Wilson's number, 213.5. Devontae Adams, 61.5. I don't hate Josh Jacobs anytime touchdown. It's plus money right now. So looking at that game, I'm torn to say the least. Definitely torn to say the least. Moving down to our last day matchup, it is going to be the Dolphins. Dolphins are 3-point dogs at the Chargers. Total in that one is 51. This game has all of the juice to be the most entertaining game of the day, and it's got the second highest total. Herbert went bombs away on this defense last year. It was a 23-17 win over Miami, a game that really, the points didn't really make sense. Both teams struggled to execute finishing drives, so it did end up 23-17 with a bunch of field goals. This time around, we're in Los Angeles, where the over was reached in all but 2 games last season. We're looking at the 22nd and the 24th ranked scoring defenses from last year and a slew of weapons on the other side of the ball. We're talking Jalen Waddle, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Tyreek Hill, Austin Eckler, Raheem Mostert, and then we get Tua versus Herbert. Give me the over. Let's have some fun. This is going to be a blast. You could have put this as the Sunday night game, but as we'll talk about in a minute, not terribly upset with that matchup. Looking at some props in this one, Tyreek Hill gets 75.5 receiving yards, Justin Herbert 290 passing yards, and Tua gets 255.5 as far as his passing yardage total. That is going to bring us to Sunday night. Been waiting all day for Sunday night, man. Cowboys, Giants. If you're a kid that grew up in the early 2000s, this felt like it was played every Sunday night. And honestly, this game should be played week 1, Sunday night, every single year. And they might be doing that. I honestly don't know. They aren't, because the Packers played Sunday night a few years ago. But this is the every kid. It's got the crippling anxiety of homework, the lack thereof. It's a nice difference now that we'll probably just be drunk. Let's be honest. We'll probably just be drunk. And as competitive a rivalry as this was growing up with Eli versus Romo, it has been unbelievably one-sided. The Cowboys have won 11 of their last 12 matchups and are 6-1 on the road in their last 7 at MetLife. New York, believe it or not, has not won in their last 10 divisional games. I don't hate the under here. Dallas went under in 4 of their last 5 overall and 5 of their last 6 on the road to close out 2022. New York seen the total go under, or saw the total go under in 6 of their last 7 in the on opening day. So I do think the Giants come out with a more traditional slow play type thing. The trends all point to under, and I don't hate it. My plan. So what I want to do is I'm going to let this inflate. It's Sunday night. People are going to be chasing. They're going to bet the over. I'm probably not going to pick this until Sunday mid-afternoon, maybe even not Sunday evening. I'm going to try to get it at its highest number, 46.5 right now. Played as low as 45. But I really do think that I can get up to near 48. I think I can get 47.5, maybe 48, because Cowboys bettors are so delusional. So got to love that. Props in that one. Dak Prescott, 241.5 passing yards. Saquon Barkley, 66.5 rushing yards. Tony Pollard, this is an interesting one, 88.5 rushing receiving yards. I like that combo for Pollard. That'll be an interesting game. Again, Cowboys laying 3.5. And then we get Monday night. Monday night's going to be the culmination of a lot of emotions. For Packer fans, we obviously watched Hard Knocks, saw Aaron Rodgers and how he's acted, how he's changed per se. And now we get to see him play football. Now we get to see him play real football. I got to see him play preseason football. I don't care. I love the Bills. Love the Bills. I'm going to hit the Bills so hard. This is not going to work out for New York. It just isn't. They have a terrible offensive line. And 12 doesn't do well without an offensive line. I watched him. Even at his best, when the offensive line wasn't good, he's not very good. And I'm not saying that he's not going to be great and he's not super awesome. He's going to make throws, blah, blah, blah. He is going to make throws. But on the other side, you got Josh Allen. Josh Allen is a top 3 quarterback in the league right now and probably can make just about every throw that Aaron Rodgers can make. Probably more throws than Aaron Rodgers can make down the field. let's not get pulled into the hype train. 2.5, I'm going to wait. Probably bet it on Bet Openly. Get it 120, 130. Looking at some props, I like Alan Lazard under 44.5 receiving yards, actually. I don't think he's going to have that big of a role in this offense as far as catching the ball. Garrett Wilson's got 70.5 receiving yards. And then one that I will be betting, probably my favorite prop of the weekend. And it's a perfect one to end on. My favorite prop of the weekend, Dalton Kincaid. Dalton Kincaid over 11.5 receiving yards on Monday night. You need to get your money back? Dalton Kincaid. They're going to use him so many different ways in this offense. They're going to shuffle pass, swing, pitch, whatever. Dalton Kincaid, 11.5 receiving yards. If I can leave you with anything, that's what I want to leave you guys with. But that's really it. I mean, we ran through every single game. We did it in 40 minutes. I'm unbelievably happy that it didn't drown on super long. When we're not going back and forth, we can fly through these things pretty quick. But that is pretty much it. Keep an eye out. I do have my card is going to come out. So the way I've been doing it with college football is I've been announcing it on Saturday mornings. I would like to get to the point NFL-wise to do the same. This week, I'm going to have a lot of stuff in early. That's just a matter of the fact because we're really excited. NFL is back. But going forward, probably going to be mostly Sunday morning stuff, but might have it out early. So keep an eye out on my Twitter. Keep an eye out on Instagram. And thank you guys so much for listening. Next week, we'll be back with Joey. I think I'm going to be in a hotel room. Hopefully, I'm not. Hopefully, Joey's not alone. Hopefully, I don't leave him hanging, but I might have to. But regardless, good luck this weekend. If you want to bet the college football plays, keep an eye out for those on Saturday. And as always, thank you guys for listening. Oh, and go use Lock Talk. Go use Lock Talk. All of the picks from last weekend, 8-3, all the picks were in there. All the love. So it's free. Got to use it. Download the App Store, Google Play today. Thank you guys so much. We'll talk to you next week.